Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I want to start by saying it is a real honour to follow the speeches made by the Minister and the Shadow Minister. Both of their commitment to furthering LGBTQ+ rights in this place and outside should be honoured. And I agree with my friend from Harlow. I got Harlow in. That you both are indeed an inspiration now to everybody else in this House, but also, I hope, future generations, so that we do see more diversity within this place, because, boy, don't we benefit from it. And before I start about this, Pride Month, it's another equalities debate, and again, it is pushed to a Thursday, when many MPs have returned to their constituencies and the press are focusing on their Sunday news stories. It's really disappointing to see so many people that would have wanted to have been here that cannot be here. It's pretty embarrassing that there is not a single backbencher from the Conservatives, that there is just one representative from Lib Dems, from Greens, from SNP, when I know that there would be more voices willing to be here if Parliament gave the time to equalities debates that it should do. I have written to the Procedures Committee about this because these should be a priority running across all departments and all the work that we carry out in this place. They're not an add-on at the end. If we're only working for some of society, we are not working for all. So I'm usually excited about Pride Month. I usually love a good party, and unlike the Minister, I like a bit of dancing, and I'm rubbish at singing, but I will do it. It's a chance to celebrate. It's a chance to come together, absolutely. It's a chance to understand, to grow, to learn. Pride is definitely more of a protest, though, this year than it is a party, sadly. I always say that progress isn't inevitable, but I hoped it would never regress as quickly as I have seen it now. It's a disgraceful environment where people's genitalia are up for debate, where UK politicians proudly question the ability of same-sex couples to provide loving and safe homes for children, and the blatant demonising of a tiny, vulnerable part of our society under the guise of protecting women and girls. I've said it before in this House, and I will say it again. My safety, both physical and emotional, has only been threatened by men. Men who were born men, men with power, men unaccountable for their actions, men who have never faced justice, men who would never be stopped by a sign on a toilet door. These are the people who threaten our safety and our society. Until they are the focus of the debate about women and girls' safety, no amount of single-sex spaces is going to save any of us. Scapegoating the trans community will not work. It will not make any of us safer. And take the latest iteration of the EHRC Code of Practice. The inconsistencies are in there and make it unworkable and unjust. Challenge someone, but don't cause harm or embarrassment. Challenge them. How is that possible? How do you prove? How do you disprove? Ask trans people to use a third space, but somehow get them to keep their right to a private life. The Women and Equality Select Committee will be questioning the EHRC chair next week, so I'm minded of the previous minister's remarks from earlier this week, that we must ask her about those details. But government, as well as the EHRC, have to provide answers to the trans community, to businesses and to organisations and to the general public as a whole on how this sorry saga ends and is not inflamed further. Because all I see is more litigation, more pain, more uncertainty and more time and money spent solving a problem that most people didn't prioritise above the actual problems this country should be dealing with, such as the 97% of reported rapes that go unpunished. Cis male perpetrators don't have to disguise themselves as anyone or anything to get away with the most hideous of crimes in this country, because they already are doing it, and on the whole, unfortunately, getting away with it. This distortion of the arguments about women's safety have had a devastating impact on trans people, with a focus on trans women and with trans men completely forgotten from this conversation, not to mention non-binary and intersex people. So let's bring it to the very real-life impact this is having to the people that we represent. I want to share a conversation now that I had yesterday. It's my constituent and my friend, Terena Hurd, an 83-year-old trans woman. We chatted yesterday. She discharged herself, I didn't know this at the time, but she had discharged herself from hospital so she could actually speak with me yesterday. Terena told me this is how much it means to get her experience and her questions across to me and to fellow parliamentarians. I did have a go at her and I told her that I'd rather her stay in hospital and her health was more important, but she disagreed. She said, I'm 83, I've lived my life. This is about the future generations and the others that come next. This is more important than her own health. She put her health at risk to speak with me. This is how existential it feels right now for the trans community. She's always fought hard against bigotry. She's one of the most talented people I've seen with her hands. Like, she's a wood turner and she makes these fantastic, beautiful pens, and she does so many fantastic things with pieces of wood that I could never imagine somebody could do without heavy machinery. But she was a mechanical engineer. She owned her own business in Luton when she transitioned. The local media covered it in a kind of matter-of-fact way. But the Sun phoned up and said, we'd love to cover it. We'd love to cover it. Don't worry, we're not going to send a reporter. We've got everything that we need from the local news. We'll just send a photographer. So they took a photo of her and plastered on the headline, "Mechanic loses nuts, customers bolt." That is disgusting. But to be honest, that seems almost mild compared to the vilification of the LGBT+ community in some parts of the media nowadays. So her questions to the Minister and to everybody in this place. How can the safety of trans men and women be protected using the toilets of the opposite gender? How is it going to be policed? Are there even enough cubicles and toilets to deal with this proposed change? She discharged herself to tell me these questions. But Terena was also terrified of being put on a man's ward. So her last question is, where would she have been put to be treated? Which ward would she have been put on? She would never have felt comfortable on a man's ward. Would it have been dignified for her to have received treatment on a man's ward? Her words, I was born a male, but I've never been a man. I tried, but I failed. I've always felt female. Even at school, as a boy, I was bullied for being, in her words, a sissy, so I left. The impact this has had on her life has been lifelong. Another Luton constituent is now having to walk considerable distances to use a toilet outside of her place of work. This is causing not just an emotional impact, but also a physical and potentially a financial one if she cannot remain in the place of work without being outed against her will. Where is her right to privacy? The Minister spoke about the Supreme Court being very clear that this should not impact a trans person's right to privacy. Where is her right to privacy being protected? Because it's currently not. I've always believed, unless we all enjoy progress, none of us truly are. If you care about human rights, you don't get to pick which human rights you care about and which ones you do not. And LGBT rights and women's rights should be able to go hand in hand. Our committee heard from the Spanish Ministry of Equality on how they are leading the way in LGBT+ rights, ranking #1 on the ILGA Europe's rainbow map. I'm not just jealous of the Spanish weather, I am jealous of Spanish equality. They have developed a helpline for LGBT people in Spain to provide support in instances of abuse and are providing world leading for fertility treatment, which is benefiting their LGBT+ communities. Spain also recently appointed its first global LGBTQ+ rights envoy to advocate for the decriminalisation of same-sex relations internationally. We can look to them as not just leaders in Europe, but across the world. And to add to this, Spain are also highly progressive in their approach to women's rights. It's not one or the other, it's both. They have developed an advanced monitoring system which police use to risk assess and track cases as gender-based violence and provide tailored protection to victims. Since the introduction of the Viogen system, the rate of femicide by a partner or ex-partner has decreased year on year in Spain. With these international examples, it's abundantly clear to me that despite what some of the loudest voices in this place and outside will tell you, it's not a case of women's rights versus trans rights, women's safety versus LGBT freedom. No, we can and should all live alongside each other, not just with dignity, but with joy, with proper celebration, proper understanding, and proper love. When we take male violence against women seriously, we are protecting all women and girls, and we are acknowledging the real villain behind this crisis rather than scapegoating the trans community. It's hard to find some reasons to be cheerful, but perhaps the world of sport may offer some, as it is full of LGBT plus legends, just like our Parliament is. Women's football and rugby continue to provide incredible role models for young women, and actually women of any age who are grappling with their sexuality. Across the WSL, the Lionesses, the Red Roses, and English cricket, there are women living their truth in loving relationships with each other, married, raising children, being themselves publicly and proudly, and absolutely knocking it out the park. For the majority of male footballers, though, displaying their girlfriends and wives online alongside their families seems completely normal. They take it for granted that society accepts and celebrates their personal lives. But for our lesbian and bisexual athletes in same-sex relationships, each time they do an anniversary post or kiss their partner in the stands, they are unwittingly making a statement and risking abuse. I want to thank them for their everyday bravery and hope that it won't be a brave act for very much longer, that it will just be a normal act. Yeah. We also need to acknowledge once again that there are still no male out Premier League footballers. Yeah. And to be honest, who can blame them? Homophobia, alongside racism and misogyny, continues to be a rampant disease amongst both match-going fans and trolls online. Hatred doesn't stay in one lane. It never does. If ever you want to see an example of that, look at what reform councils are doing with pride flags. They're not stopping with pride flags. No, they're going with Ukrainian flags. It will always be somebody. Yeah. Because if you don't have the answers to the problems facing you, it's easier to blame somebody else than it is to really look inwards and look in ourselves and look at how we can further our country together. I know this week Millwall FC released a Pride playbook to advise on connecting with LGBT plus teams. I hope this is the beginning of a new era in inclusivity in men's football. But I know we've got so much further to go. There are seeds of hope across our culture and society for LGBT people, and that I want to end on. February saw HBO drama Heated Rivalry break viewing records across the world.
That was you watching it, wasn't it?
I am pretty sure that a lot of us enjoyed that programme. So it's celebrating a particularly fiery LGBT love story, whilst also channeling new fans into winter sports. I love ice hockey. It's like, I am so up for all full contact sports, but roll in a good love story, happy days. Durham Pride have raised enough money to throw the biggest pride in their history. And if there is an example of love winning, that is it. Yeah. Especially in the face of hatred, love will always win. Yeah. With support from their local trade union movement, this has to be one of the examples of what we all must be fighting against in the future. And last October, King Charles unveiled the first mural dedicated to the LGBTQ plus members of the British Armed Forces, named An Open Letter. It honours servicemen and women who experienced homophobic abuse. And rates of adoption amongst LGBT people have quadrupled over the past decade, with at least 20% of all adopted children now finding a loving home with a same-sex couple. And how dare any politician, how dare anybody say that that isn't the best place for a child? the best place for a child is always with a loving home. And our Labour government, as we have heard today, is set to finally bring in an end to the painful, arcane practice of conversion therapy. The trans-inclusive conversion practice bill, which was included in the King's speech, should be coming, and I can't wait to support it. And while the light behind the clouds may be hard to find, and the rainbow's really, really far in the distance from all that rain, it is important that we do find that glimmer of light, those rainbows this Pride Month, because I want to end with the words that Terena said to me yesterday. She said it's what her grandmother and her family had always said. It's something that my grandma had always said to me, and it really shouldn't be that difficult. Treat other people the way you would like to be treated. It's not that hard.